Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and obviously judging by the title of the video, we're going to be going over gas trucks and diesel trucks and what's the better buy and what you should go for. I really could have done this video without these two trucks here. I just thought this would be cool to have a diesel truck and a gas truck next to each other just for visual representation. But basically what I'm going to do is in the beginning of the video, I'm going to go over the differences between diesel motors and gas motors kind of in general with the power figures on them and then fuel economy figures on them. And then we're going to kind of get into, which one is the best to go for. And then if you are wondering, this has a 6.7 liter Cummins in it, and this one has a 5.7 liter Hemi in it. So gas motor, diesel motor. Those are the kind of two motors today, but we're just going to talk about the motors in general. So first, the pluses on diesel motors. So generally speaking, they usually have a little bit better fuel economy than a comparable gas motor, a little bit more torque on them, but they're typically lower on the power side of things. And then just depending on the cost of diesel fuel at any given time with the better fuel economy or with the cost of diesel fuel, they can be cheaper just on a day-to-day basis. The thing about diesel motors is, like I said with the torque, the nice thing about them is they have low-end torque. So the diesel motors typically have a lot of low-end torque, so getting up and off the line is super easy. Now gas motors, like I said, with the fuel economy being better on diesels, usually gas motors, they have a little bit less fuel economy. They can have similar numbers in torque, but typically they have lower torque figures, but then higher power figures on the horsepower side of things. And then just depending on gas prices will determine if they're a better buy. Right now, they're pretty similar, at least here in Utah. Be wrong, but I think like right now to fill this bad boy up, I think diesel's like around $3 a gallon roughly, and then fuel for this is about the same. So the fuel cost right now is about the same. Sometimes gas will go up, sometimes diesel will go up, and sometimes it'll go down with the diesel and sometimes it'll go down with the gas. So that kind of varies, but right now the cost on them is roughly the same. Now mechanical stuff with diesels, it's typically a little bit more money to run a diesel. So just the oil change intervals, for example, it's usually more expensive, but then you have longer oil change intervals. So like, for example, on this, it's almost, you can go up to like 15, almost 20,000 miles in some cases between oil changes with a lot of the diesel motors. Whereas on a gas motor, it's typically, 10,000 miles. Some of them are even less, 5,000 miles. So you'll have to change the oil more often in this, but it will cost less versus when you have to change the oil in the diesel motor. But just in general, just to keep this super simplified, to maintain a diesel motor, it's usually more money. Just all the parts associated with it are a little bit more money than the parts associated with a gas motor in general. Sometimes there's a little bit of deviance in that depending on the car, but in general. So now that we've kind of covered some of the stuff from a car perspective, let's talk about trucks actually. So with a truck, why do you get a diesel over a gas motor? Now most people, it's all about towing. Because diesels have so much low-end torque and they have a lot of torque in general, they're a lot better for towing. So on the Ram, for example, I'm going to give you some numbers. So for this 2019 Ram 1500 with a 5.7 Hemi gas motor, the maximum towing capacity is right around 11,000 pounds, and that's with a four-wheel drive truck. Now if you go up to a heavy duty with a 6.4 Hemi, you get about 16,000 pounds towing capacity. Now the diesel is going to be significantly more. The starting towing capacity is around 17,000 pounds up to like 19,000 pounds on a single rear wheel, a little bit more on some packages with these trucks. And then if you go up to a dually, you're up to over 30,000 pounds towing capacity. So you can see almost twice as much towing capacity as the gas motor with going on to the diesel side of things. So from a towing standpoint, yes, the diesel will tow more. Another thing to note is when you are towing with the diesel, the fuel economy doesn't change as much as it would be on a gas motor. So when you're towing with the diesel, usually the fuel economy only goes down slightly because it's just not overwhelming the motor. It depends on how much you're towing, obviously, but typically it just doesn't change as much, whereas on a gas motor it changes a lot more. So a really good example is if you were to put like a 5,000 pound trailer behind both of these, you would see kind of like a significant loss in fuel economy, probably at least 5 or 6 miles per gallon less. Whereas in the diesel, it might not even change it by more than maybe a gallon, maybe miles per gallon, I meant. That was my bad, not gallons per mile. That'd be sad. But anyways, yeah, it just doesn't change it as much on the diesels. Partially is if with the higher towing capacity, it's not changing things as much with it. But the other thing is they just handle the towing better in general. Now, another key difference between diesel and gas motors is diesels typically are a little bit more rumbly, if that makes sense. So there's a lot more vibration with diesels, so they kind of have a unique sound to them, usually louder and just not as kind of like luxury feeling, if that makes sense. Whereas the gas motor is usually a little bit quieter, less vibration. So, you know, from like a luxury standpoint, the diesel wouldn't be as luxurious. Now, something else that you're going to notice characteristic-wise between the two is because the diesel motors typically have less power. So just to give you kind of an idea, I'm just going to talk about diesel motors on the 1500. So this has a 5.7 liter Hemi, has 395 horsepower and 410 pound-feet of torque. The EcoDiesel that Ram also makes for the previous generation had 240 horsepower, and then it had 420 pound-feet of torque. So it had more torque, but a lot less horsepower. So typically gas motors, you can get a higher top speed, and because of the power, they usually accelerate more quickly and more adequately compared to, you know, diesel motors. And that's just kind of gives you an example. Same torque between those two trucks, but then the EcoDiesel has a lot less power. So the EcoDiesel with the Rams is slower. Now, non-towing fuel economy, like I said, with the diesels, it's usually a little bit higher. Just to give you kind of an idea on trucks, let's talk about heavy duty trucks, for example, on the Rams. So if you do a 6.4 Hemi, and depending on what gearing you have will change the fuel economy, but most 6.4 Hemi trucks with the 6-speed automatic transmission, like the diesels had with the previous generation, people were averaging a lot of times 11, 12 miles per gallon. Someone with a 6.7 liter Cummins with a 6-speed automatic transmission, a lot of people were averaging closer to like 16, 17 miles per gallon, similar driving. So yes, the diesel a lot of the times will get similar fuel economy when you have similar setups, you know, same type of vehicle essentially. And just to give it another, you know, example, on the 1500s, this 5.7 liter Hemi, most people average 15 to 18 miles per gallon, roughly somewhere in that range. Whereas on the EcoDiesel, a lot of people will average well over 20 miles per gallon, both half tons, different motors. So again, the diesel usually a bit better on the fuel economy side of things. Now here's another big thing is the cost. So diesel motors up front will cost a lot more. The new Rams, it's about $9,000 to purchase a diesel motor in these trucks, whereas the 5.7 liter Hemi is a $1,200 up to $2,600 option if you get the e-torque. But yeah, you're talking thousands and thousands of dollars more for the diesel. So that kind of brings us to summing things up. Which one is better to get? It depends on what you're using it for. If you are going to be towing and you're going to be needing that higher towing capacity, the diesel is going to be better for you. Now, from a cost standpoint, a lot of, like I said, the diesels usually get better fuel economy, but they aren't usually more cost effective, because if you have to pay more to get this diesel motor and it costs more for running costs, then you're not really saving money, even if the fuel economy is better. Because if I buy a truck that doesn't have a diesel motor, it's just a gas motor, and I pay, you know, literally in this example, with that being $9,000 for that engine and this being, you know, $2,600 for that engine, I pay $7,000 roughly less for the engine. And then, you know, the gas prices are about the same and my maintenance costs are lower. Do you know how many miles you have to drive before you even out the costs? It's literally hundreds of thousands of miles if you do the math on it. That's kind of my 2 cents on that. I know that not all of you are going to agree with me, but that's kind of my point. Is I feel like gas motors in general are usually superior just from a cost-effective standpoint. But if you do need more towing, go for the diesel motors. But if you're not towing anything, I would recommend just sticking with a gas motor for your vehicle. Thank you everyone so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you want to see more types of videos like this, please leave that in the comment section below and I can kind of start making more videos like this. But if you are stopping for the first time, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe, comment down below what you thought, and then I will see all of you in that next video.